I've never seen quite so many smiling faces. So why are you so blue?
Hello and welcome to the first episode of We Are the Machine. My name is Chris, and I'm the host of the podcast where we try to tackle AI from a different direction. How it's going to affect art, music, film, and culture at large. So it has been discussed, but largely out of fear. And hopefully what we can do here is not necessarily change that emotion, but maybe discuss it from different angles. Maybe we're seeing it one way for certain reasons. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're right. I don't know. But the whole point of this podcast is to dive in and talk about it. So I hope as we go on, people will feel free to comment, leave emails for me so we can have real discussions. And I'd like to hear from artists. I'd like to hear from tech people that have no involvement in it and just want to tell me what they think, because I don't think that I know what this effect is yet. And I think that it's an interesting moment in time. As a kid that grew up loving tech and still loving it and following AI is something that interests me. And also as a musician or songwriter, I've dabbled in small little filmmaking projects as a kid. Nothing major, small time stuff. Even still, when the music Suno, for example, released, the AI music maker, I did kind of get into a little bit of an existential crisis about what's the point of even trying to make it. Not that I ever would have, but if that can be done with a computer, what's the point of me as an artist? And it was a little bit depressing for a while, but the more you start getting into thinking about it, the more it's got a lot of different places it can go. And I think it's worth us as artists and as people that are going to deal with this for whatever it is, it's coming, and find some new ways to think about it and maybe enjoy it on the way. So why do this show now? So as I said, this was largely spurred from these new AI things in music. I actually found it very interesting with the video generation. It didn't seem super great at first, but as somebody that hasn't really looked at filmmaking, that was intriguing to me. That was interesting. It was amazing, obviously. ChatGPT and everything changed the way I search, the way I work, the way I think about work. But Suno and those other AI music makers, when they started to get good and they started to make music that almost felt like other ones, you couldn't tell. It sort of did discourage me as an artist, and it made me think about it. And that's why we're starting now. And I guess if somebody were to listen to only one episode of this, what would they take away from it? What should you feel? It's a question of, hopefully, don't feel doom. If you're an artist, a filmmaker, a musician, feel hopeful that this is maybe something else we can somehow play with. Somehow it's going to incorporate. Somehow we'll make it work. It'll be more interesting because of us. Which kind of leads me to the next point of what is the name of this podcast? We Are the Machine. What does it say about art, authorship, identity, the meaning of a song, of a movie? What is the point? Is it about metaphor? Is it about camera work? Is it about the story? I've heard, I believe it was Steven Spielberg speak about, he's more interested in understanding a story underneath it. Everything else should come second. And this is from the guy who made Jurassic Park, one of the most beautiful effects things. He says those effects aren't as important essentially as the story. If you don't have the story, you can't get that second part. So I guess it begs the question, what is the crux of it? What is the part that matters the most? And are we losing something there when it comes to AI, or what are we gaining? Aside from, jobs as animators, which is a whole nother topic. And job as an artist and art as itself are two separate things. And that's something we'll have to unpack as well. And I think should be interesting. So is it scary that the machines may be taking over? I suppose so if you look at it from a doom perspective, but obviously there's optimists. Part of me feels, and has come to understand that some of that is marketing, because the more you're afraid of it, the more important it feels. So take that into account. I also think about it in terms of other technologies that have come forward, way back down to the beat machine, or even the electric guitar when Bob Dylan used it for the first time and the crowd turned on him. Obviously, this is a much larger thing, but there's parallels, and I think they're interesting to unpack. So I suppose now we can move into, again, a little bit of the artist side of who I am and why this is interesting to me, and maybe how we can get on the same page with each other. So I basically have experienced songwriting for about probably 20 years now. And when I say songwriting, I mean, I learned guitar, I'd write some songs. I was originally a drummer in a band. Then I had my heartbreaks and my stories that I wanted to tell. And I wrote song after song, and I have them and recorded them, played the instruments, then mixed it, couldn't mix it, didn't feel. And, essentially after 20 years, nothing came out. And it's kind of the classic story of the artist that thought too hard. And they had their moment maybe, and then they didn't. And regardless of whether they would work now, some of the magic sort of went away after you're staring at the same thing for 20 years and you're not experiencing it with other people. That individual creator, which is somewhere we may be going with AI. And so, again, I don't know what the positives and negatives are there yet. It's tough to define good enough as an artist. And now hearing something like a Suno, AI, obviously, music maker, nail a song perfectly, mix it perfectly, create it right there on something you couldn't do for 20 years, it's kind of a little bit heartbreaking. And then I took one of my songs that I had recorded, just acoustic, and singing, and I'd uploaded it, and I gave it a style. And it played back to me in my chords and my, vocal notes, but it was done beautifully and it was mixed beautifully. And I listened to it over and over and over again because it felt as though for the first time in all that time, I could feel the song that I was trying to express to somebody else. And maybe somebody could have even heard it in the original, but I couldn't hear it anymore. And there, I realized that there was something interesting. I started to question, was I the musician or was I always the songwriter? What was the point? I got tired of the recording and the playing. The guitar almost got hard to hold in my hand after a while. But I just still wanted to express the story. The story was the most important thing. I wanted somebody to hear it, somebody specific for whatever song or moment. And I couldn't get that there. But right there in front of me, it was there. Good enough for that person or anybody to hear it and go, oh, I can hear the lyrics now. I can hear the emotion because it's not hidden by what I perceived as not good enough. So in that moment, I realized there was two sides to it. Obviously, we're probably going to be flooded with a lot of terrible AI-generated music without feeling. And then there's going to be a couple songs that I wrote in different styles. And they'll have different meanings of their own. And that interests me, and I don't know what that means. And part of me worries that, am I burning my music on this? Could I have just produced it better? Does it matter? But the actual journey of it is the most interesting for me right now because it's exciting. I feel it again. I can feel the music again. And even the change in styles changes a bit of the feeling behind it. The videos that I put together behind them have a different emotion to that style. And that all is an interesting study in genre, in music, and storytelling in general. And I'm not saying that I'm let's be clear, I don't believe that any of these songs are something award-winning or fantastic. I just think that I can hear them like I heard them in my head. So there's now the question of, is it co-creation or automation? Because I can already feel people out there yelling and going, well, if you couldn't do it with the guitar, you shouldn't be a musician. You don't deserve to play. There's all these things people go through. And I'm not going to argue with you. I totally agree. I think those people that have made some of the greatest music in the world are unbelievable. I've seen some people play that have spent their whole lives practicing widening their hand so that they can reach notes. On the guitar, on the banjo. That's amazing. Nothing will take that away. But that wasn't my path in it. And it comes back to the co-creation. Am I the songwriter? And now instead of having to go through a whole bunch of channels as a songwriter to get this thing played by somebody quality, which is what happens with pop music. They sell them a song, and somebody that sings well plays it, and 50 people mix it. Well, here's my emotion in my style right away without all of that. Does that make me less of a songwriter, less of a musician? Okay, don't call me a musician. Then I'm a songwriter. Or don't call me anything. I don't know. But I like listening to my own song finally. And maybe you will too, even as just a practice. So it's just something to think about. Because obviously there'll be full automation. GPT lyrics, Suno production, VO videos. And maybe for some people, one part of that is the important part for them. And the rest is just the thing holding them back. So that's one way to look at it. And again, it comes back to what is the role of the artist now? Are you a painter? Are you a filmmaker? You're a songwriter? Is the future less about technique, more about vision? Is it more of a Renaissance man thing where you are a king of many trades? Or maybe not a king, but I get whatever the thing is, jack of a lot of trades, but everything is in your hand. And maybe it's not always optimal, but the story is finally told. Instead of a $400 million movie with no story, you have a free movie that looks just as good with a great story from random people throughout town. You don't have to wait for somebody to fundraise $600 million to make something beautiful and tell your story. Could that be a boost? I guess the question is, what are we worried about? High-end Hollywood, or do we want storytelling? That's kind of where I'm at in the beginning of this search. And so please, again, leave comments, send emails. I'd love to hear your opinions. And I want to do more on these topics. So we can get close to ending here on what can't the machine touch? What is still untouchable by automation? The sound of my voice cracking or whatever you make up, I believe is going to be automated away. So I think it's tough to just try to fight with a bucket against that ocean. You got to try to use it in its own way. I heard a good quote, famous producer, I'm blanking on his name, famous producer talked about when he heard the first AI version of Jay-Z, and he listened to it and he said to himself, I just realized that I don't listen to Jay-Z for the sound of his voice and the music. I listen to it for his point of view. And I think that was basically the crux of where I'm getting at, is it's the point of view of the artist. And if you want to say that the AI can recreate a point of view, I would probably agree with you. Eventually, it'll have its own point of view. It kind of already does. You can structure it even more that way. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's just another point of view. Just as there was beat machines, there's still drummers, even though they're afraid they would go completely away. And I guess in pop music, they largely have. But they're still out there. Live music is still out there. So this is just another point of view. And yours can still be valid if you tell it. And can something copy it? Yeah, but you already told it. And what was your point? Was it the money? Was it getting your voice out there? Was it telling your story? Was it reaching somebody through a radio? We start to look at what is the meaning and point. What are you searching for in reality? And I think that's what AI is going to have us face. And we'll see the positives and the negatives of that. All right. Well, we took a little bit of a long run there, and I appreciate you guys hanging with me for the first episode. Again, I would really like to hear from you guys. You can find me on Rift Fitters on Instagram. We'll be on TikTok. We will be on Spotify and all other podcasts, and obviously on YouTube you can subscribe. But anywhere you can reach me, I'd love to hear your comments, negative, positive. Do you hate what I'm saying? Call me a name, whatever. Come on for an interview. I'm happy to discuss this. I think this is an interesting topic that's being covered only in one way and very lightly. So please reach out. Let's get this going. Let's start talking. Let's build some community, which is something we're missing digitally. And if you fear that AI is going to take even that away from us, reach out. All right. Thanks again. That was the first episode of We Are the Machine. I am Chris, and I will talk to you soon.